Mrs. Devika Vidot, Minister for Investment, Entrepreneurship and Industry, Mr. Billy Rangasamy, Minister for Lands and Housing, Mr. Gervais Henry, Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, members of the Diplomatic Corps, Principal Secretaries, CEOs, distinguished guests, staff of the Seychelles Investment Board, a very good morning to you all. My name is Alex Henderson, and I shall be your MC for this morning. Welcome to the Public-Private Sector Engagement Forum hosted by the Seychelles Investment Board. We are privileged to have numerous governmental entities and key partners from the private sector in attendance, whose presence underscores the importance of our discussions today. Today's forum is a unique opportunity for us to engage in meaningful dialogue, share insights, and forge collaborations. It will drive our collective goal of fostering a robust investment environment and enhancing the synergy between the public and private sectors. Before we proceed, I would like to take a moment to recognize the hard work and dedication of everyone who has contributed to organizing this event. Your efforts have been instrumental in making today possible. Ladies and gentlemen, on your table, you will find the Wi-Fi ticket and a feedback form to fill out before the forum concludes. Please leave the completed form on the table so our staff can collect it. For those who have driven here, please bring your parking tickets to the reception for validation, where a hotel staff will assist you. Without further ado, let us start our program. Please join me in receiving Ms. Anne Rosette, CEO of the Seychelles Investment Board, for her welcoming remarks. CEO.
Minister Devika Vidot, Minister of Investment, Entrepreneurship and Industry, Minister Billy Rangasamy, Minister of Lands and Housing, Mr. Gervais Henry, Leader of the Opposition, Deputy Speaker, Secretary of State, Mr. Patrick Payet, ambassadors and representatives of the Diplomatic Corps, distinguished guests, staff of the Seychelles Investment Board, everyone present, a very good morning to you. A special welcome to all and a happy anniversary to my team and all those who have built SIB in what it is today. I do not intend to speak for long, but I simply want to welcome you all to this event and to perhaps give some clarity on the purpose of today. Established in 2004, SIB celebrates today its 20th years of its existence. SIB has played a meaningful role as a government entity over the years. Many may not know, but SIB has been a silent collaborator to many of the foreign direct investment inflows and local direct investment initiatives in the country. The work we do might not be visible for a lot, but it has been very positive impact on the country's economic position. It is therefore important for us and for those that engage with us knows how best they can leverage on our expertise and knowledge in business and project establishment and development in Seychelles. Such an event in the form of the Investor Forum and panel discussions seeks to bring to the forefront the importance of public and private sector partnerships. When we were discussing how best to celebrate this occasion, the idea to launch an annual investment forum was born. Our aim going forward is to bring together players across economic sectors for the meaningful discussions and actions around the topic of investment in the Seychelles economy. So I look forward to some fruitful and insightful discussions today. Before I end, I would like to express to you all my thanks for coming in. This event could not happen have you not responded to our invitation. We are very grateful for today's turnout. I would like to thank the panelists and moderators who have graciously responded to our calls. My sincere thanks also goes out to our suppliers and partners who have helped the team to bring this beautiful event to life. Last, but of course not least, my team under the leadership of Katharina, and Rola, you have done a brilliant job. Thank you for your hard work. I hope today we will create and build purpose for the future. Have a great day.
Thank you, CEO Rosette. We move on to the keynote address by Mrs. Devika Vidot, Minister for Investment, Entrepreneurship and Industry of Seychelles. The Minister has been a driving force in numerous initiatives that have significantly improved our nation's entrepreneurial and investment landscape. Please join me in welcoming her. Minister.
Minister Bilerangasamy, dear colleague Minister, Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, Mr. Gervais Henry, Secretary of State, Mr. Patrick Payet, members of the Diplomatic Corps, PSs, CEOs, distinguished guests, staff of the Seychelles Investment Board, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to you all. And welcome. The 20th anniversary of the Seychelles Investment Board provides an opportunity for us to reflect on SIB's achievements, on its challenges, and of course, its outlook on the future. Before I go any further, I would like to acknowledge and I'd like to thank each and every one of you who has played a role and contributed to the achievement of the milestone that we are celebrating today. Over the past 2 decades, SIB has been the face of investment in Seychelles, as the first port of call for foreign investors and also as a friendly reception for the local ones. As you may be aware, SIB is an entity of the Ministry of Investment, Entrepreneurship and Industry. The agency has been instrumental in guiding domestic and foreign investments through its facilitation and promotion services. SIB's functions allows it to be the best advocate and partner for investors, the best partner for the private sector. And together with the ministry, the work continues to ensure that Seychelles remains an attractive destination for investment worldwide. And our ministry is committed to improving the climate for both local and foreign investors. The work continues to reduce bureaucratic hurdles, enhance transparency, and ensure greater predictability in the investment and the business landscape. Exactly a year ago, the Ministry, together with the help of the UNDP, launched what we call the SDG Investor Map. And this map is currently hosted on the SIB website. For the first time, Seychelles emerged with a marketing tool which lists out the investment opportunities in key areas that support sustainable development growth. This was done by aligning our policies with the United Nations SDGs, all with the aim of guiding private capital to SDG impactful businesses. Investment opportunities were highlighted in 5 key sectors, namely renewable resources and alternative energy, services, food and beverage, infrastructure, and technology and communication. Looking ahead, we must acknowledge both the opportunities and the challenges for Seychelles, especially in the priority sectors, in agriculture, fisheries, blue economy, information and communication technology, and the digital economy, where a lot of effort is being placed for us to establish and grow this sector. The global investment landscape is continuously evolving, and Seychelles must remain attractive, competitive, adaptable, and resilient. SIB therefore becomes increasingly relevant, and we need to ensure that our efforts to overcome obstacles and seize new opportunities for growth and development. Which brings me to today's event. The primary aim of this forum is to bring to the fore the work being done by SIB, firstly, as an investment agency amidst the current investment climate. We expect that throughout this forum, you will be able to help us evaluate its accomplishments. We hope that you'll be able to inspire discussions and generate ideas that will guide further improvement, all aimed at targeting economic growth for our country. We firmly believe that public-private partnerships are the key to economic transformation, and to this end, our collaborative efforts with the private sector continues. Therefore, I urged our esteemed moderators and panelists to fully engage with the audience, and I hope that you have very stimulating discussions. The interaction will be critical to providing valuable takeaways and insights on the chosen thematic areas, and this will help us to better formulate our strategies moving forward. I wish you all fruitful deliberations and look forward to the insightful and constructive conclusions from this forum. Before I end, please allow me to once again take this opportunity to express my gratitude to everyone who has been involved with SIB over the 2 decades, the partners, both from government and from the private sector, and especially the SIB staff for their dedication and for their contribution to the growth of this institution. Your work has not gone unnoticed. Thank you very much for the countless events. Thank you very much for the numerous meetings and for the sleepless nights. Thank you for your hard work. And thank you everyone for being present with us today to celebrate this very important milestone for SIB. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Minister Vidot, for your address. We now welcome back CEO Anne Rosette for a short presentation on the Seychelles Investment Board. CEO.
Good morning again, everyone. I do apologize, Deputy Speaker, for the error on your title previously. I hope I'm forgiven. Good morning again, SIB. So we do have a lot of engagement at SIB with our partners, investors, members of the public who come to see us. But I think a lot of times people do not really understand, in general, do not really understand what our purpose is and what we're there for. So we said today we'll take a brief moment to just go through what SIB is about, and so that our interactions going forward can have more meaning. So the vision of SIB, obviously, the Seychelles Investment Board, and SIB for short, is to make Seychelles a globally diversified investment center. SIB is an IPA, which is an investment agency, just like we have in most countries. Our entity is government dependent, so it is in central government. We get our budget from central government, as you know. Most of us, we have to go into to the assembly to have our budget approved annually. So we are not what we call an SOE or a private entity. Our mission is fourfold. We want to improve, to promote, local and foreign investment in Seychelles. We offer a world-class service. I think the team try their best in customer service. So if ever there is a failure, we will humbly ask your feedback, and we will try to make it better the next time you interact with us. We work closely with our key stakeholders, which are government agencies, but also the private sector and any key entities or businesses in the private sector. We continue and contribute towards the development of an investor-friendly environment. So, as you know, the Ministry of Investment, Entrepreneurship and Industry is key for ease of doing business in Seychelles. And we, as an entity of that ministry, we also support in that engagement. Sorry. What is our goals, okay? I touched a bit on it previously in terms of developing sectors, but at the same time, we want to develop sustainably. We will talk about it in the forums later on how Seychelles, as a small country, we have limit resources, and we have limit resources in terms of land. We are sea rich, yes, but how do we balance the both? We want different investment types, not only foreign direct investment. We are encouraging local investment also, and we work a lot with our local partners. We want diversification, as we have noticed or come to realize for post-COVID that we cannot rely on certain sectors only. We have to diversify our economy so that we are more resilient to global shocks. We want to develop our country in terms of infrastructure so that it can support any kind of value added that we want to build in the future. And lastly, but not least, creation of jobs. So this is where you have an economy which is growing. If you have people in employment and you have good employment, you will have a country which is more resilient. Why is it not working? Okay. So what is the role of SIB? We want to attract foreign and local investment. We facilitate the process of any investor who wants to establish or implement a business in Seychelles if they think they need our support. But there are instances as well where they do require to pass through SIB so that we can then not approve the process, because that's not what we do, but we consult with the other authorities which have the legal, let's say, regulatory requirement to sanction any business activity. We collaborate with our stakeholders, as said previously. We advocate for fair regulations because our country, as you know, we have a set of regulations which does encourage investment, and we want to promote that so that it is seen as something which is attractive for our destination. We are committed to sustainability. As I was explaining, a small country with limited resources, we need to ensure that future generations do benefit from the economic growth of this country. And we promote diversification, obviously. Our services, what do we do? Our team is made up of 20 around at the moment. We can be more, but we've had challenges to get talent. This is something we will work with the ministry going forward on how do we attract the right talent. But we do our best with the resources that we have. We have three main units. Two of them is basically sitting on the outside, which we interact with a lot with our stakeholders and investors. We've got the promotion side, which is, we call them marketing, but what they are doing is actually promoting investment and promoting investment initiatives, actually making Seychelles visible as an investment center, but also interacting with the local entities and even in the community to see where we can establish projects that can build a community in Seychelles in general. We have on the other side what we call the facilitation, which I've just explained to you what it comprised of. It's a team actually working daily, interacting with investors on their projects, and really a hand-holding kind of work from start to finish, even post-investment. So you can see up there we have pre, which is before the project gets implemented, and post is when the project has got implemented, and now what follows is the execution, is how, if it's a construction, for example, the building, how it's going, how the investment is flowing in, what the spendings are, if it's meeting what the proposal that was sent to us that has gone through our process is actually being executed as it was said to be. And obviously with that, we want to get further investment by doing the post-investment activity. We also have a unit which sits in the middle, and that's the market intelligence unit. And they work around getting trends, seeing whatever initiatives that we are doing in terms of promotion or facilitation, if these are being, what impact is that creating, if we need to course correct anything, and obviously feed into policy decisions or strategic decisions going forward. So why we would say the work that we do, why is it important that we do it? Seychelles, like any country or any investment jurisdiction, what they want to do is bring investment. So investment helps a lot with the economy. What we get in terms of investment, for example, in foreign direct investment, helps to balance out in terms of our economic prosperity. So why do we promote Seychelles as an attractive investment destination? Seychelles GDP is relatively a good one. It's 15,874 USD per capita. We've got a stable currency, the Seychelles rupees. We have got a population at the moment going to 100,000, and without non-Seychelles, I can get to 123,000. We have an FDI inflow at the moment, forecasting at 289 million. So we're expecting that to grow further than what we had pre-COVID. Pre-COVID was around 300 going to 400 million, but now we want to move that back to that good number. We have a land surface, which is very limited, like I was explaining before, but we do have we are sea rich, 1.3 million kilometers of sea, and you can imagine the resources that's out there in our seas, not only in terms of fish, but in terms of other things that we haven't discovered yet. So that there's an opportunity for us to develop that resources rather, yes, sustainably. Our weather is quite warm, 27 degrees, sometimes 32, but it is one which is very attractive to do business in. You can do anything outside for much more around the year, most likely. Unless when it's raining like this. It was raining this morning. Our languages, we have three formal languages, English, Creole, and French. I apologize, this session today is in English, but because we want to reach out as many people, not only in Seychelles, but we are having a live stream, so we want this to reach out to as many people in the world as possible. Not that we wouldn't like to speak in Creole, but it is a choice that we want to reach out. And then our nature is really pure. We are probably one of the economies which have been less touched by commercialization. So there are a lot of opportunities out there. We are, I would say, a green environment, not only green in terms of our beauty, but green in terms of untapped areas where investment can take place. So connectivity, other benefits of Seychelles is that we are, we sit right at 400, I think it's 400 kilometers, sorry, away from East Africa. We are not so far from the Middle East. We have planes coming in almost every day from all corners of the continent. And we basically right in the middle of the Indian Ocean. So we have a very good connectivity in terms of even our seaport, where we have tourists coming in by cruise ships. There are opportunities there for us to create value added in every aspect that we want. Entry and living in Seychelles, for anyone who've had the opportunity to go through an entry request permit would know that it can take some time, but if you're coming to Seychelles, it's relatively very easy. You just need to have your funding and the passport, which can take you for the duration of your stay in Seychelles. If you want to extend your stay in Seychelles into what we call a gainful occupation permit, you have to go through the process with the Ministry of Employment and Immigration. In terms of accommodation in Seychelles, there are a lot of rentals available, and the rentals can start from $900 up to $1,100 per month. It is really widespread on all the 3 islands. In terms of education, we have 39 state schools, we have 1 university, and we have 4 private schools. So there's available education if somebody wants to settle into Seychelles with their children. Health is free for citizens and payable for non-citizens for certain services, but private medical is open, and it is actually a subsector which is growing. In terms of transport, we have a very reliable public transport. We have taxis available in Seychelles and rentals available as well. We don't have railways because the distances to go to any destination is quite small. We do have ferries that operate between the main islands, and obviously there's helicopters for islands which are far out, and we have flights as well going to the main island of Praia. It's also important to know in Seychelles that we have a very good legal system. It's based on Napoleonic law and the English common law, and we advocate fair regulations. Our political landscape is quite stable. We have fair elections and the peaceful transition of power after elections. You can lease and own land in Seychelles, but for non-resident, non-Seychellois, there is a process that needs to go through, and there are some restrictions. You will have to look at the Immovable Restriction Act to find the requirements for that, but everything is found on our website if you want further information. Labor requirements, like I was explaining earlier on, we have 46,000 people who's in work in Seychelles. Our literacy rate is quite high. The minimum age in Seychelles to work is 15. It can be, it's 16, 15 years. It can be limited further, but you have to look at the regulations to understand that, and we're prepared to give you the information for that. Minimum wage can range from 34 to 40, depending if it's manual labor or not. There is a 13-month pay in Seychelles, which was recently brought to law. The GOP for non-Seychellois workers, like I was explaining, is a process that we'll need to go through. So to sum up, why Seychelles? I call it the 4S, okay? Seychelles starts with S and ends with an S. So strategic, we are strategic. Like I was explaining earlier on, the connectivity. We want to promote sustainability in our resources and our development. We are stable as a country. Not only the currency is stable, the life is stable, the economy, the political landscape is also stable. We are a safe country. Your investment will be safe because we promote fair regulations and we encourage good investments. And also to have a life in Seychelles for you and your family, and anybody who wants to invest is a fairly safe environment compared to the rest of the world. So there you are, a bit of why Seychelles and what is it we're doing and why do we have to keep promoting our country, Seychelles. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO Rosette, for your insightful presentation. I would like to take this opportunity to encourage potential local and international partners to engage more with SIB to boost investment and drive more economic growth in Seychelles. We now proceed to our first panel discussion, Public-Private Sector for Financing as a Catalyst for Growth. This panel will explore various financing models, their significance, and how they can be leveraged to drive economic development. Our esteemed panelists will also discuss the opportunities and challenges regarding access to finance. Please welcome our distinguished guests, Mr. Patrick Payet, Secretary of State at the Ministry of Finance, National Planning and Trade, Mr. Oliver Bastien, Chairman of the Seychelles Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Ms. Rana Fernandez, Head of Credit Control at the Development Bank of Seychelles, and Mr. Peter Wozeli, a business tax consultant. Dr. Michael Hall, Dean of the Faculty of Business and Sustainable Development at the University of Seychelles, will moderate this panel. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, ministers, good morning. I'm Michael Hall, and I'll be moderating the first panel meeting. I have to say I'm looking forward to this. So first of all, the question goes to Mr. Bastien. What are the most significant challenges small and medium enterprises face in accessing finance? And the second part of the question then is how financial institutions can address some of these challenges.
Thank you very much for your question, Dr. Hall, and good morning, everyone. Okay, all right. Good morning, everyone. That's better. Here we go. So to answer the question, I think first it's really important for us to understand, I guess, in terms of the landscape here in Seychelles pertaining to what I call the demographic of businesses we have here. And don't quote me on the stats, but I think you're looking around 80-90%. SS, please, I hope I'm right here. Micro, small, and medium businesses, 80-90%. I think that's a fair stance, And so, so understanding the challenges of the MSMEs are fundamental with regards for the growth that we're talking about. And I think one of the main challenges that a lot of the MSMEs goes through with regards to accessing pertaining to finance is around the lack of collaterals. I think a lot of the smaller businesses have this issue where fundamentally you see that when they do go to the banks, that they are utilizing a lot of their personal assets as in terms of the main collateral. And this becomes in terms of a fundamental challenge for them. And some of them do not have in terms of this collateral. So again, this becomes an automatic barrier with regards for them to expand or to grow or to move into new, in terms of new era, Secondly, another challenge, and I'm sure Peter will agree with that, is that, I'm going to call it the financial pack, So what I'm saying here is when you look in terms of the businesses, especially the small and medium ones, when they go to the bank and they bring their business plan, a lot of them have in terms of what we call a lack of credit history. they will have volatile, well, Rana also will agree on that, a really volatile cash flow going forward. So the banks are looking at that and going, how do we finance that, you know? This becomes a challenge. And I think also not understanding in terms of their forecast of what's going to happen, I think it's also a challenge for the private sector, but also for the FIs, the financial institutions. So it's really hard for them to access the whole creditworthiness pertaining to whether they can support these businesses. And I think another challenge which I think it's fundamental to talk around is around the length of time it takes for the application process. Again, I'm not putting blame anywhere. I don't want to get in trouble, but it does take some time. And let's be honest, it does take time. Albeit it could be the fault of the bank or the fault of the private sector, the business itself, but it does. And so there needs to be good planning for the business before, you know, if they want to do it on very, very quickly, it might be a challenge for them. So then the question, your second part of the question is, what can the financial institutions do in terms of for these challenges? Well, the first one, I think it's really in terms of a discussion that we need to really put it out there, which is what kind of other collaterals can we start thinking about? For example, you know, I run a professional service firm, and if I have in terms of, I'm looking at my banker there, and if I have in terms of a debtor list, you know, can I utilize that as a security? You know, if for example, if the business has got certain kind of equipments, can they utilize that as security, their inventory? So it's not an easy answer, it's not an easy solution, but I think we need to move away from just looking at the traditional one. And if I can then wrap this up, I can see I'm taking a long time already, is around in terms of, and banks already do that, it's around in terms of looking at the volatility of the cash flows and having a solid, flexible repayment plan. But that's working with the business together. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. I think the whole concept of innovation and doing things differently, and we heard this morning a challenge in bureaucratic ways and speeding up bureaucracy in some ways is really an interesting concept, and I think the whole government is looking at. I want to move on now to the different types of examples or of case studies where innovation has been used in finance. And I'm going to ask Mr. Rosalie to answer this question. So can you think of anything, sir, where there have been examples or case studies of where innovation has been used in financial instruments, so for example microfinancing or crowdfunding, which has been successfully used in bridging the gap in funding for SMEs? Over to you, sir.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm Peter. Well, with regards to the like microfinancing, VC, we have angel funding here in Seychelles. Actually, we have tried the seed capital, but for me, the first element will be the regulatory framework. We need to look at it properly. But the main point will be the ecosystem. I think it's time for us to relook at the entrepreneurial and the business ecosystem in it, whereby we have to look at the culture. We're talking about venture capital, angel, crowdfundings, but is the culture there? Do people know that you can have an asset, like Oliver said? You can have a property. You don't have cash to develop it. So you can raise money by using those, your property. But then again, for me, my main focus would be, we don't have much example of venture capital in Seychelles. Maybe later we will talk about the PPPs, but we don't have much. But first thing, I think we need to look at the laws, the policies that we need, because I know there are a lot of businessmen out there with a lot of cash in the bank, not being used. They don't have time to do other businesses, but we can come up with a model whereby they can be encouraged to put their money into a fund, and we have the like SIB, ESA, whereby we create ideas, we create people to start businesses and access those funds rather than going through the traditional ways with the bank, looking at the collateral, looking at, I've got an idea, I want to start a business. And I don't have money, I go to the bank, and the bank asks me the bank will say, meet me halfway, and I will meet you halfway, but I don't have cash. I've got the idea. So we need to look at the main focus on the ideas, how, I know up there at Gimwell Institute, there are filing cabinets, loads with business ideas sitting up there. We went through, I think Oliver knows, the AFDB program, whereby we train 800 people, 800 ideas. And I think it's only about 100 that has burgeoned or they have started or become successful. But we have a lot of ideas in Seychelles, innovative ideas, sitting in files, and nobody knows that those people got those ideas, Once I came up with someone wanting to sell the air that we breathe. It's pure. Maybe people laugh. For me, all ideas can be commercialized. But going back on the element of the crowdfunding, we need first, I think, to look at the ecosystem and then build up the culture and create awareness so that people knows there are other ways and means to raise capital or funds. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Wonderful responses there. And it's going to lead on to the next interesting points as well, which we're going to come back to Mr. Bastien. And Mr. Bastien, I'd like you to, your opinion then on how effective government-backed loans are in supporting SMEs. And the second part of the question, as usual, what additional measures could be taken to improve their impact in helping SMEs?
Thank you for your question. I think government-backed loans are so critical for us. I'm looking at SS and because we've had various discussions on that and positive fights, I would say, But of course, I think for the financial institutions, we were talking around the challenges earlier. I think, especially around collaterals, I think it reduces the risk for the financial institutions. So it actually makes it much easier. Well, theoretically, it's meant to be much easier for financial institutions than to onward lending in terms of to the MSMEs. Of course, what it does, it lowers the interest rates for the private sector. And of course, we love that when the cost of finance is much lower. And furthermore, I think it widens in terms of the accessibility. So no longer, let's just say only 10% could access just traditional loan. Now you have 50, 60% that can do that, And I think the SME scheme shows that. And it's been going on for quite some time now, it says 10 years. And it actually, I think, we need to celebrate that scheme to a certain extent because it's been going on for a long time. So it's actually working. Now, so for me, I mean, when I think either minister or the CEO were talking around the SDG investor map in terms of earlier, it shows that, the thinking of the government with regards to diversification. It shows with regards to the economic transformation that government keeps talking about. And so I think these kind of government-backed loans can help in terms, a much more aggressive government-backed loan can be even more supportive with regards to, in terms of that push pertaining to the economic transformation that the government keeps talking about. But I think it's also important to stipulate that government-backed loans, historically, I mean, when you look at during COVID, for example, when you look after the 7th December, 7 December in terms of the explosion, I think these discussions of government-backed loans are very critical. But there are a lot of challenges, especially when the FIs are talking to the government and to the central bank. You know, I think these kind of discussions needs to be much quicker and much more in terms of aggressive towards supporting the private sector. But also, I think, just two final points. I think we in the private sector, we also need to look at ourselves. I think it's all very good always pointing the fingers at the government, but I think, the government will tell you, especially when we push for the Small Business Support Fund with DBS, that was around during COVID, I believe. And it was a 0%, no security, 100,000 maximum in terms of support, which the government backed it. And it was sad to say that when you look at the stats, that we did not behave responsible, because maybe no one in the government will say that, but I will say it because I pushed for this. And when you then go to the negotiation table with government as the chairman of SCCI, they'll always go, oh, okay, Oliver, but hey, look at this, you know. So I also want to make a shout out. The government-backed loans are critical. I want to encourage government, don't give up on us. But also, I also want to say to the private sector, when we're given in terms of those back loans, let's seize the opportunity, let's use it wisely, and let's be responsible.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much. On a final note then, what do you see the role of fintech playing in transforming SME financing in Seychelles?
With regards to fintech, I think to me, I think this is brilliant. We need more fintechs in Seychelles. And when you look in terms of the various initiatives or projects or businesses that are starting to come out, I think it's positive. I mean, you hear in terms of the Jews, the Absa one, I can't remember the name, but there's the Absa one. But recently we've heard about Ibu, and I think it's positive that we encourage in terms of these kind of ventures, and especially when you look at a company like Ibu, which is local, and so we want in terms of these fintechs to sprout up as quickly as possible, because I do believe that it gives in terms of a catalyst. Number one, with regards to the government agenda, we hear in terms of the whole notion of, is that me? I'm talking too much? Yeah, I think it is.
No, that's for me.
Oh, that's for you. With regards to the cash light agenda, I believe. I think that's what you guys call it, cash light agenda. So I think it makes sense. I was just reading the Today, and I think Mr. Bernard Jackson, I think his final interview, I think he was saying, let's get rid of cash, I think if you guys managed to pick up in terms of that interview on Today. So, when you do have fintechs, for example, we hear around the mobile payment solutions. I think that's really interesting. It's 24 hours now. And furthermore, I think when you look at platforms like Ibu, they kind of keep telling you that, hey, you can utilize our platform to look at the statistics, to look at the data analytics, the insights, of better understanding in terms of your business. And I think the best place moving forward would be when we have fintechs getting involved in microfinancing. And I think that this will be a space that I think the FIs will not mind, because there is a gap there. And, it is, when you need those quick in terms of decisions being taken, and fintechs can do that. So I think they play a key critical role, and I really encourage these kind of investments like Ibu to keep on pushing into the market. Thank you.
I mean, we've seen throughout the country different competitions like the hackathon through various organizations. The hackathon was designed for entrepreneurs, people with innovative thoughts of designing apps to improve the management of finance. So thank you, Mr. Dustin. That's brilliant. I'd like us to move on now to the concept of financial literacy. And this question is posed to the Secretary of State, Mr. Pyatt, then, and how crucial is financial literacy for entrepreneurs, and what strategies can be employed to enhance the financial education amongst SMEs?
Thank you, and a very good morning to all. For me, I feel it's very crucial because, first of all, we need to ensure that the SMEs, they have the ability to manage a bit the cash flow effectively and to take informed decisions. What we've seen, especially in the context of Seychelles, one of the components is about maybe not banking. Yes, they are getting revenues, but they are not banking. And these are information that it is crucial so that at least whenever you are applying for a loan, it can be used for the bank to know your history. And then secondly, one of the sort of maybe not trusting the system, mainly with taxation system, because what we've seen is the information that they provide the banks is a bit different compared to what they provide the Seychelles Revenue Commission. And I think this is where a lot of advocacy needs to be done, to explain to them the rationale. Why is it for you, the information that you are submitting to Seychelles Revenue Commission, it can be used at the same time for you to get a loan in the future. So definitely for me, it's a very crucial thing so that we do more advocacy through workshop, because there's a lot of, for example, through ESA or even SIB or the Ministry of Entrepreneur or even the Ministry of Finance or other agencies, we can do a lot of advocacy, or through TGMI as well. And then secondly, how do we get them to work together? Because there are a lot of good SME that has developed from small and has gone into maybe a medium and then go large, so that at least we can get those that have really evolved, maybe to be a mentor to some of them. So a lot of things can be done through the advocacy and literacy as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And there are good practices going on around the country at this moment in time. So I'd like to call upon Ms. Rina Fernandez now just to talk about any of the successful financial literacy programs and initiatives which have either happened in your bank or you're aware of across the country. Good morning, Ms. Fernandez.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you. Yes, we do have programs in place. We actually have one with ESA, which we work closely with for the seed capital. And together, ESA with the University of Seychelles, they hold trainings, and trainings are conducted regularly for the proponents. Secondly, we also take note that the University of Seychelles will be introducing the business incubation program sometimes very soon. And however, we will need the public and the private sector to come in and help with this program. And thirdly, we have the apprenticeship scheme for the school leavers, which together with the financial institution, the University of Seychelles, the student can go and work part-time, and then at the same time they can attend school and earn a degree in business, a BSc in economic and finance. Thank you.
Wonderful. That's not just pushing for the university, but at the university we take our responsibility very seriously. So we need help with the incubator, so supporting new and existing businesses to be able to grow, and like the Secretary of State has mentioned, the access to finance and different finance modules as well. So thank you. That's a brilliant testament for us as well. Coming back to Mr. Pyatt then, what are the key policies, government policies, which support SMEs? And how effective have these been in growing SMEs, in fostering that relationship with the government?
Thank you. Maybe if we can start on the tax policies, I know the taxation, which most businesses don't like. But however, just to advise that there are some very good taxation policies that the government has introduced. For example, the presumptive tax regime for the small, especially those earning below 1 million, there's a special regime for them. And also in regards to, in January 2022, government reduced the tax rate from the taxable income above 1 million. The remainder to be from 30%. This was reduced to 25%. And then this year, government introduced a tax holiday for startup, especially in 3 key sectors, blue economy, digital, and manufacturing, for a 5-year tax holiday. And also for some of the those investing in climate change, there are some tax component that has been introduced last year as well. And then seed capital is one as well. That's another scheme that government has in place. So at least you get up to 200,000 for startup as well. And then one of the components that Oliver has mentioned is about the SME scheme, which is one of maybe the great success that has been done. 2.5 billion has been loaned out to small and medium enterprise. And this scheme, government guaranteed even at 70%. But however, what we've seen is a very good success because currently maybe what government has to give back because of the guaranteed to the commercial bank is very low. So we've seen that those that are on this scheme, they are paying their loan. So this is why it's an important sort of policy and scheme that we have in place.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. Mr. Bastian, moving on from what the Secretary of State has just said there, what additional policy measures do you think are needed to simplify the regulations? You talked in your earlier answers about the constraints of bureaucracy, the time it takes for processing of applications. What practical things could we do?
Well, firstly, I just want to directly maybe respond to a statement by SS Payet. No, the private sector, it's not that we don't like tax. We believe in a taxation regime that's fair and equitable. I think that's what we like. And also of course, we would like lower tax rates. So let's start from 25. Let's even go further down to 15. Why not? You know, I think that will then keep on stimulating us. You know, exactly. But I with regards to other policy measures, so I do agree that the presumptive tax regime. So I think we got to keep on looking at the taxation regime. And I know Minister De Vica was pushing also quite extensively for us to relook also at the VAT regime, which I think is also very, very important. So we got to keep on doing that, you know. And when you look at when you look at the ease of doing business, which I think is on everyone's kind of fingertips, you know, we all would say, yeah, ease of doing business. Let's get it done. You know, I think it's a very challenging thing, but I think there has been some successes that we've seen. But I do keep encouraging the government, the National Assembly, but also in terms of us in the private sector, we need to work together here and really kind of just map out in terms of, I mean, my background is an auditor. So for me, it's always around in terms of mapping out the process and really looking at the bottlenecks, the risk, the different kind of controls within the process, and then start basically looking at how we can make that much more seamless. And a lot of it are already embedded within the law. So this is where the National Assembly comes in. And I think Mauritius has done a really good job in terms of the way they've simplified in terms of a lot of the process. And I think they pushed through what we call a facilitation bill, where they looked at all the different areas of bottlenecks pertaining in the law, and they got rid of that, you know. So I think then this goes very nicely with the work that the government is doing pertaining to digitization, where they are pushing a lot of digitalization of a lot of our processes. But to me, it's also around getting that process right in the first place. But I think there are positive things, but I do want to encourage that to go on even further. The incubator, which I've just heard with regards to the UNICEF pushing, I think that to me is, you know, and I'm sure Mr. Wazeli will agree, I think that is fundamental for us, you know, going forward, especially for the micro, small, and for those that are thinking about this concept of selling air. I think it's good to get them in this in terms of machine, and get them in terms of rinse a little bit in the incubator, get them that support. But I do agree, Dr. Hall, that for me, unfortunately, I hope you don't take it the wrong way, but I don't think it can only be the UNICEF. I think it has to be all of us working together. Because we're a small country, it doesn't make sense to have 10 incubators, 5 incubators. It makes sense to have one incubator. So let us all, in terms of work together to make that happen. And my last point in terms of regulations or policy measures, I think we should encourage PPP. And PPP, public-private partnership, is so important, especially in this day and age, where effectively resource limitation is so critical. And I think we've got some amazing success stories. So I want to encourage the government, let us not regress, but let us progress with regards to PPP. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. So that really does lead us on to the next points of the discussions, and very interesting ones. So I'm going to come back to Ms. Fernandez now to give us, in your experience, what, either at the bank or again, generally speaking, what sort of financing schemes are available for people wishing to start businesses or expand their businesses from small to medium and then even to large?
Okay, I will speak for DBS because I'm here to represent my bank. So at DBS, we have like 6 schemes available for the businesses to develop their businesses for startups or expansion. So we have the SME scheme, and then we have the DBS scheme, which is our own scheme. And then we have other schemes that we manage on behalf of the government. So basically these schemes are here, like we have the Blue Investment Funds. This is for the development of the blue economy. We have the SBFE schemes. This is for small businesses, and you can access financing for a loan of up to 300,000 rupees. We have the FDF, which is the Fisheries Development Funding. These are for the development of the fishing industry, longliners, value additions. And then we have the ADF, the Agricultural Development Fund, which is for the registered farmers. I will not go into details of the schemes, but if you wish to have access to this information, it's available on our websites. And you may also contact us at the DBS, or if you want to have a quick chat with me while I'm here, we can have a one-to-one conversation. All right? Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. It just goes to show that, again, there is a lot going on, which we don't really know about. We seem to be operating in isolation, and maybe this forum is a means of closing that gap. Thank you. Thank you so much. Moving back on to the concept of public-private sector funding, I have another question now for the Secretary of State. And again, in your experience, how crucial is public-private sector collaboration in stimulating economic growth? Every country in the world is talking about growth, we've mentioned GDP and things like that, but How important is public sector and private sector collaboration?
No, definitely the public and private sector collaboration is very crucial, especially when you take into the context of Seychelles, because a small island state economy where we have a specific challenge because of limited resources, the impact of climate change, the external shock as well, and also maybe because of our heavy reliance on tourism, key industry, key sector. So how do we collaborate further between the public and the private sector to maybe mitigate some of those challenges? Government are there, yes, to set the regulatory framework, the policies, but the expertise goes back to the private sector. They have the technical know-how, they have the investment. So for me, this is where government needs to come and work with the private sector. And I think one of the key components that Oliver mentioned about PPP, yes. The PPP framework, currently, yes, we have a policy, but hopefully by early next year, we should have the regulatory framework. This is something that we are pushing as well, because we've seen that, yes, there are some infrastructure gap that exists, and we need to get the private sector on board as well.
And thank you again so much. And moving on that theme, I'd like to ask Mr. Rosalie then, what are the possible challenges of public-private sector financing models? And the second part of the question then would be, how can it be mitigated effectively? So we have the challenges. What can we do about it?
Okay. First, just I'll wrap up on the challenges that we have with it. First of all is the awareness. People need to know that you can have a piece of property or you can have an idea and you can join with the government and develop a business. So we have a good example in Seychelles. The oldest one is the Takamaka Bay. We have, I think, PS, you can confirm, Thai Union is a PPP, CCCS, and IPHS, I think, is another one. So I think now from the private sector, we need to make the first move, because I thought we didn't have any regulatory framework, but maybe hopefully one day we'll have an act that governs that, and that will push people forward. Then we have the shareholders agreement. We need to, again, build a culture. It's not, we're not used to those things in Seychelles. So first, before you jump into it, we need to educate people. We need to sensitize people. We have the risk management element. You know, two people coming together, different conditions and working together. It's not us personally, it's about the project that we promoting, the governance and management of how the PPP will work out, the stakeholders engagement, and finally, I think we have the technical and operational issues that we need to sort out. So I think we need to go back and look at what has been done and been successful, and we need to learn from there and now start to push it around, because it can raise a lot of money, I think. I know. A lot of money. Like I've said before, we have a lot of businesses with excess funds lying idle. You know, maybe some are in the bank, like PS said earlier, about the cash issue. Small businesses doesn't bank. Maybe for me, I'm involved a lot with small businesses. I know why they don't bank, because actually in Seychelles, businesses have a cash flow problem. You know, the timing of the cash cycle, the cash coming in and the cash going out, it's very tight, you know. You have some expenses that you haven't predicted, like you have someone on a contract, cleaning rivers, fixed contract, and then you have expenses, costs to pay like the 13th month, So you don't receive a 13-month check, but you have to pay 13 months salary to the workers. So you have to go to the bank and request an overdraft, and the bank will ask you 100% contribution. So if you request 50,000 as OD, they will request that you have a security and a collateral of 50,000 there. So there are a lot of difficulties, but the way forward, I think, for me, I'm very positive. If people know that we have like now regulation on PPP, and the Ministry of Finance or Entrepreneurship start to sensitize people with different programs, workshops, how it works, the condition. People like my good friend, Mr. Bastien will come forward and help out, SCCI. And that's my view on the PPP, whereby we can move forward together. But finally, before I end, I would like to point on the issue about the ease of doing business. I've been involved with that. I've been to EDA in Mauritius, I think 7 years ago. We've seen how they did it. We came around and fixed a registrar of companies. We were taking 2, 4, 5 days to issue a business certificate. And we found what was the problem. It was about the stamping of the certificate. The stamp lie with one person. So then we decide with the deputy, just give the stamp to other people. And it moved 24 hours. One day I have the experience, came in the morning, checked the name, I pay at 12, and at 2, I receive my certificate. It can be done, but what I wanted to say on the ease of doing business is the regulation. We had a lot of archaic laws that we need to change, but in the end, we need to be very careful. It's about the attitude of people. That's why things are not moving forward sometimes. It's not about the regulation, it's about the attitude of people handling those situations. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you for the wonderful insight. We're going to move on to our final question now, and still looking at the concept of public and private cooperation. And the question is to the Secretary of State, how do we navigate these potential conflicts between the differing priorities between public and private sectors? Private sector have a different set of objectives, where public sector is possibly more about providing a service, with financial considerations being secondary at some stage.
Maybe to start with is we need to have a shared vision for Seychelles. And I think this is key, because this is why we have the Vision 2033 and the new National Development Strategy that for 2024-2028. With that, this vision and NDS, it was not done in isolation just by government, but it was something done with the private sector, consultation and engagement. And I think this is key, because at the end of the day, the private sector will know where government is going, especially in regards to the transformative economy. Yes, the different other strategies needs to work with the different sectors. But however, the main pillar is there, so that at least both the government and private sector should know where is Seychelles going in the next 5 years. And then secondly, Seychelles is small. And I think this is where, if there is any problem, communication is key. Let's sit around a table and discuss. And I think we've visited so many of the other countries where we've seen that, yes, there is a particular problem in this area. We need to sit down between the private sector and public sector and discuss and find maybe alternative solution, and then propose maybe policy guidance or policy proposals to amend further. So for me, the main two is about how do we collaborate and find a solution together, and also about the shared vision for Seychelles.
Thank you so much for the inspiration. And that really does sort of conclude our panel discussion. So we'll be inviting questions. I just want to give you one example of public engagement by Nouveau Bank. And we'll all have seen the financial awareness programs and trainings they've been offering throughout the country. Not just for school children, not just for school leavers, but for all members of the community. And it sounds rather vulgar at this time to sort of say, in collaboration with the university, they've offered and delivered a very successful program. It can be done, and I think, conferring with what the Secretary of State has just said, it needs all of us to come together. So, panel members, thank you so much. I think we have a couple of minutes from questions from delegates, if that's permissible. We must have covered everything in such detail. There are no questions.
Good morning, Mr. Michael, Dr. Michael, and the panelists. Thank you so much for invigorating the session. With regards to the investment, like financing, catalysts as a growth, for the young people, I believe, like Mr. Payet has mentioned, there can be policy creations that can be done. And since we are inviting a public and a private partnership, I know on the continental level of Africa, there are angel networks. And in Mauritius, they have a base, but we don't have one in Seychelles. We can't just blame the bank for the loans, because the banks need a high level of security. And most young people, they don't have a piece of land, or they won't have a guarantor to secure financing. And I would also like to mention, since we are looking for private sector, why not establishing, what would you think of having an investment bank or investment managers in Seychelles? I know that in the UAE, it's $5 million, and most people in Seychelles, they don't have this level of money. So why not diversify the financial catalyst sector and have these new institutions in place to help us to grow overall? So what would you think about this quite very elaborative question and statement this morning? Thank you.
Thank you so much for a very challenging question there. Should I ask the Secretary of State?
No, thank you for that comments and even the question as well. Yes, definitely this is something that as part of the strategy, both the FSA and the Central Bank of Seychelles, they are looking at innovative ways. And I think one of the components is about investment banking in Seychelles to the context. Certainly, as part of the whole strategy, this is something that both the institution and even the Ministry of Finance is looking at it. Maybe to touch base off, yes, sometimes we think about just Seychelles, but I think because of limited population, we need to think about beyond Seychelles. And we've seen, like Mr. Ozeli mentioned, there has been some good practices. And this is where Seychelles, we have signed a lot of agreement with SADC, COMESA, EU, EFC, CTN. But how do we get more from these agreements? And how do we get the SME to go beyond Seychelles and go outside of Seychelles, so that at least we can export some of our services or products, or even do more? So, and even for financing as well, because, for example, when we look at World Bank or African Development Bank, they are just not, or even TDB, they are not just there to loan to government. They have a private sector investment arm, and I think this is where we need to build more awareness, educate more, so that at least the SME or even the private sector can go beyond Seychelles. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Oliver, would you like to finish off the session then?
Yeah, I just want to, sorry, where are you from? To which organization? I can't really see you. Which organization? Okay. All right. Okay. Thanks. Thank you. I think the concept of an angel network or venture capital, I think to me, it requires still a lot of sensitization in Seychelles, because angels and VCs will come and they will take a significant part of equity from the micro and the small in terms of businesses. So I think it does require a lot of, in terms of understanding of those models. I don't think it's something that is far-fetched for Seychelles, but I still believe that we need to understand when an angel come or when effectively the VC will come, they're going to expect a high return on their investment and a significant portion of equity. So I think that these are things that we need to think of. But I just want to pick up what SS is saying with regards to FSA. I can see the CEO there. I do believe that the capital markets is underdeveloped. Thank you, SS. And I do believe that there's a lot of opportunities with regards to capital markets. I believe that recently, for example, Cable Wireless and TDB, they issued, I believe, the first corporate bond in the Seychelles. So I think we need more stories like that. We need, in terms of merge, to be much more in terms of progressive with regards to liquidity in terms of the MSMEs in Seychelles. So just want to add those few points. Thank you.
Thank you so much, panel. Unfortunately, time has beaten us. There are lots and lots of more questions and debate, but what has come out of this morning is very much about collaboration and avoidance of duplication of efforts. So we come together, support what the SS has said by coming together, getting around the table and working to a common goal. Thank you so much, panelists, for your patience and endless emails over the weekends, but we really do appreciate your contributions. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you, panelists and moderator, for a thought-provoking discussion. Please remain on stage for a group photo. Group photo. Group photo. Group photo. We will now take a short break and welcome you all for a family photo in the lobby. After the group photo, feel free to enjoy the refreshments and to use this time to network with fellow attendees. We will reconvene in 20 minutes for our second panel discussion on sustainable investments in Seychelles. I thank you. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a refreshing break. We now begin our second panel discussion on the critical topic of sustainable investment in Seychelles. Please welcome our distinguished panelists, Ms. Anne Rosette, CEO of the Seychelles Investment Board, Mrs. Nanette Law, Director General for Waste Enforcement and Permits Division at the Ministry of Agriculture, Climate Change and Environment, Ms. Audrey Poutin, Chairman of the Seychelles Bankers Association, Ms. Fachim Conte, a private consultant, and Mr. Shahid Melani, entrepreneur. Ms. Angelique Juliette, legal consultant and founder of AJ Mediation Services, moderates this panel discussion.
Good morning again, everyone. Good morning to panelists, all protocols observed. I hope you had a nice tea break, but we're getting down to some serious business now. And I would like to kick off our discussion, no beating around the bush, this is business, with a question to our CEO. So, what are the primary factors that influence the investment climate in Seychelles, and how can we make it more attractive to both domestic and foreign investors? Please, CEO.
The prime factors, like I said in the presentation, is that Seychelles is relatively untapped in terms of investments. We've seen investment in the sector of tourism quite a lot. There's been investment in the fisheries sector. However, there are a large amount of sectors and subsectors still to be developed and where innovation and creativity can come into. I think with the government's initiatives on digitalization, this is one aspect where we can see some progress will be made in the near future, and also in the sector of marine, let's say, l'espace marine development. So this is, these are the sectors where we want to see investment into. However, Minister also mentioned that we developed the investor map. So this identifies the 5 major sectors, but it also gives an idea of where government is able to facilitate and put resources behind so that the economy can be transformed in, let's say, in the next 5 to 10 years. And where we think, as a government, we should apply our resources into so that we can develop as a country. These have been well established. The information is on our website, and we do have technical guides. And even if you want in soft copies, this information, we can provide it to you. And I think the banks also can use that as a kind of pack for them to develop products that can match investment. Why Seychelles? I said it before. I mean, we're a country where we considered one of the best countries in Africa presently, minus the fact that we are a small nation. Yes, it's true. However, small nations comes with their challenges as well. And I think a lot of investors have experienced this. So it is a country which is open to investment, which is very important. It is a country which has specified the sectors where investment is available. It is a country where our regulations are really fair, and I mentioned this already. Investors can invest and take out their money as they wish. We also have banks, which have corresponding banks, which are working, and the money can move around, of course, with global restrictions and considerations. We have a good climate as a country, and it's pleasant to work in Seychelles. It's pleasant to be in Seychelles. We've got a beauty which is immeasurable, and anybody who's investing in Seychelles will attest to the fact that they want to invest and also protect what they see in this country, and they will tell you at the forefront of their project, they're considering the environment and the impact of their investment on the environment. There's many more I can say. I mean, we are a pleasant nation. We are a stable country, and politically, our people is ready. And we were in South Africa last week, and one of the investors we were talking to said they've invested in Seychelles and they had a pleasant experience, and they can tell everybody in the room that they experienced. So that was a good testimony. So I think as a country, we have what it takes. However, we are missing how do we execute that, and how do we translate this into like really projects that could transform our economy. And one of the things that SIB is going to do is planning on doing, and we've started already, is working with communities into building projects, and also look at the industries, the sectors, with our MDAs, how we can provide bankable projects.
Thank you, CEO. In light of you mentioning the climate, the environment, the 4 S's that you mentioned in your presentation, I'd like to ask Mrs. Law to intervene in terms of the investment climate, no pun intended, a bit more about what you think in terms of the environmental aspect of investment.
Thank you, Angelique, and good morning, everyone. In terms of the environment, I will focus more on the natural environment. We know that it must be reminded, and we acknowledge that our environment sector is one of the sectors that drive the economy in Seychelles. I mean, people come to Seychelles because of our natural environment, our beauty. So as much as we have a favorable environment for people to invest in, we need to ensure that whatever investment, whatever activities, whatever projects that we have is in line with our strategies in terms of conservation, in terms of protection, and we need to ensure that the future generation is also able to enjoy what we are already enjoying. So like CEO have said, we have a lot of opportunities in terms of how to tap into investing in our natural resources, make use of what we have. For example, we will this year be signing our marine special plan into law. So there are activities that can be looked at, that can be developed as part of this. So we have an environment, we have a beauty, we have a climate that is very much favorable for investors to come in.
Thank you, Mrs. Law, for that insight, and CEO as well. I'd like to throw the microphone to Mr. Milani for his entrepreneurial point of view. If I can ask, can you provide examples of successful investments in Seychelles and factors that contributed to the success?
Hello. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for your question. I can think at least 4 sectors in Seychelles. For example, the tourism industry. We can nominate the Four Seasons, for example. It's a really good tourism industry whereby it has attracted high-end clients and giving world-class amenities. And such factors such as its location, its exclusivity, and its surrounding beauty has contributed to some of its success. Also, we have the fishing sector, which is one of our main largest eco sector in Seychelles. Mainly we have IoT, which has been a really good investment. Factors such as the large EEZ and abundant marine resources has contributed to its success. Also collaborating with international organizations such as the EU, government policies has enabled such successful investment. We also have the real estate sector. For example, Eden Island is a really good example. It is one of the most notably known development in Seychelles, with its exclusivity in itself, its high-end clients, giving commercial space. Yeah. So then we can go to the 4th one, which is the financial sector, notably offshore, which brings a lot of foreign currencies investment-wise. It is really good in regards to policies with the foreigners, tax-wise, residential permits, and vacancies. These 4 sectors does have a few things in common. Like I've said, its strategical location, Seychelles is one, its resources, its policies and government backing and sustainable practices. So far, this.
Thank you, Mr. Milani, and I'd stay with the microphone. Just to follow up as an entrepreneur, in the landscape of investment in Seychelles, what regulatory reforms are needed to reduce bureaucratic hurdles and increase transparency in Seychelles? And perhaps if you can tell us how we can ensure this, please.
Okay, I believe some points were mentioned before in the first panel. We can try to simplify the business registration and streamline permit processes. Streamline permit processes and licensing procedures. We can create a one-stop shop for every documentation needed for starting a business. We can also streamline or enhance online platforms that will enable the government facilitating these procedures, or have a dedicated committee for these in regards to helping our people fast reply 24-hour services.
Thank you, Mr. Milani. I'd like to throw it to CEO for her intervention, please.
Yes, to go back to the follow-up question to Mr. Milani, I think he mentioned the streamlining processes. The ministry, in collaboration obviously with government, is looking at, like we've said before, establishing the investment portal, and this also in there would be the streamlining on processes online. But not only that, but of documentation and removing any kind of duplication in the process. So this is something that is imminent. And obviously, yes, it would take some time for all the government bodies on the approval process to come on board. But as we go through time, this will be something that the end game is to achieve a more lenient process. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. And in light of that, you feed into the next question. We've spoken a lot about public-private partnerships, so PPPs in Seychelles, and Mr. Bastien really highlighted that this is the way forward. So I'd like to ask Ms. Audrey, from the chairman of the Bankers Association, what role does she think the public-private partnerships play in driving innovation and growth? And can you share some successful examples?
Thank you, Angelique. Good morning, everyone, once again. I'll answer the question from a banking perspective. So when you talk about public-private partnerships, from a banking stance, it essentially relates to provision of financing to businesses. So over the past decades, there have been significant contributions from the banks in relation to the country's innovation and growth. And this is by supporting individuals as well as businesses by providing them finance. This is through their own credit facilities as well as through government schemes, like Mr. Bastien previously mentioned. I believe the most relevant one, the most common one, would be the SME schemes along with the government. So when it comes to successful examples, this has been raised a bit by Mr. Milani. So we have some successful projects which have been financed in the fisheries sector, for example, with the exportation of fish. There is also a renewable energy projects and real estate as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Audrey. That's very exciting to hear. Staying with you, what are the potential challenges now that the PPPs face, and how can they be mitigated?
Okay, I believe this question has also been highlighted previously by the first panel. So if I can summarize the challenges into 3 main points. The first one would be the bank-customer relationships. So how does the bank know you as a customer? And more importantly, are you banking your money like SS Payet mentioned previously? So the banks have to know that you have the necessary capital, the necessary funding in order to be able to repay your loan, basically. The second one would be financial management. We see that a lot of people do not know how to manage their finances from a business and personal perspective. So when you have your business, how do you ensure that you are not mixing your business funds with your personal funds as well? So the third one would be in terms of quality of business applications. This has also been alluded to. So having a good business idea and then bringing this to the banks through a good proposal so that they understand where you are coming from, how your business will be funded, would be how you raise profits, marketing your project and things like that, so that they are sure that you will be able to repay your loan as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Audrey. And clearly, panel one touched upon a lot of what you're about to say and you said. So, I mean, we've set the landscape of investment in Seychelles, but now let's dive into sustainable investment. And so, CEO, since you are the host with the mostest, how can Seychelles align its investment policies with the UN Sustainable Development Goals to promote inclusive and sustainable growth?
Well, we've already made the first step to that. I think we developed the investor map last year. We launched it. It's available in any form, e-print or online or through even our Facebook. I think we're constantly putting messages around the investment map. The investment map is aligned to the SDG goals. Obviously, it's looking at food. It's looking at the sustainability in terms of our resources. It's also looking at the human factor, and it's looking at a country, how we're going to sustain our development so that we don't kill ourselves. The factors that were highlighted, as mentioned, were the 5 sectors in services, obviously, food and beverage, and then obviously in there we had a cultural aspect, which is cultural tourism, and we highlighted the blue economy, which remains a key sector for Seychelles, renewable energy, how do we transition from landfill to renewable energy, and how do we get rid of landfills possibly in the future. Also, how do we transition from fossil fuel into other green energy? Also, it addresses sectors like technology, ICT, and professional services, and how do we adapt technology into any creative or innovative businesses aspect that we might have. One of the key ones is how do you have platforms where you can sell your services or product without having, the creation of going physically to do that. I think it addresses the impact. That's all it's called, impact. The sectors where impact investment is required, and when we're talking about impact investment, I think it ranges from 5 million to 100 million USD. And the return of investment is looking at 8 and plus 5 and 8 plus %. But it varies from sector to sector, obviously. The technical information of those is available, like I say, if anybody wants to have it, they can. We've started that. So now it's about building bankable projects, like I was saying, with the different sectors to ensure that what we want as investment in these sectors is actually carried out in real projects. Investors like to know where they want to put money into business ideas, but they want to know what it consists, what it is, what's the outcome for them, and how realistic is this business activity and how it's going to translate in the years, if it has a future or not. So bankable projects will bring that to light. Once we get that, we are using a pilot example. We're working around renewable energy at the moment, and we will move from sector to sector, obviously with resources permit, because as I was saying, we're a small team, but we're doing our best to actually by next year, at least if we can have, each sector will have bankable project or 2 bankable projects, depending on how fast we can move. And this will be key ones that will impact transformation in Seychelles.
Thank you, CEO. And just to follow on, I mean, you've mentioned there is that plan that identifies a key sector, but how is SIB promoting investment that creates jobs, improves living standards, and support local communities in Seychelles? So how does this plan that you've beautifully detailed to us, how does that ensure that the local communities do get the opportunity to enjoy this plan?
Yes, because it's open to everybody, right? It's not, we have an investment act which does say where non-Seychellois can invest and where Seychellois only can invest. So there is an area where you will have to go through what we call the economic needs test. If you're a non-Seychellois, for us to attest if that business activity or activity, commercial activity, is going to create impact to the country and is going to help the country. And some criteria are used for that, the scoring. You can find information online, what the scores, how it's actually measured. But aside from that, we know exactly where Seychelles can enter into activities, and they only can enter into activities, and where non-Seychellois can enter into activities and not. But there again, I mean, I would like to stress, and I think that's one thing that we have to become very aware. I've been doing, meeting with a lot of investors, even in Seychelles and outside Seychelles. What I would like to see as well is projects that bring the two together. You might not have a foreigner that is not able to enter into a concept, maybe in Seychelles, but they can become your financer, but how do you have a model, a vehicle model that can translate that into your business activity? It was explained from the previous panel earlier on that we shouldn't be putting up our personal finance. Sometimes we have to, but it can become a collateral, but there are people we can partner with, there are consortiums we can build. Where activities are restricted to Seychelles, why don't we come together? Why are we always trying to do things on our own? Sometimes it's impossible. Even a company, well-established company, had board members, and not all of their board members knows everything. Some have specializations. Some will be specialized in legal. Some will be specialized in operations. Some will be specialized in other things. But that's how a company should operate. Any kind of business activity should operate with that kind of model. How do I leverage on my partners or people who have expertise or people who can do things for me, who has the same passion as I have, wants to do something? How can we as Seychelles get together and build projects that can transform this country?
Thank you, CEO. That was very inspiring. Throwing it to Mrs. Law from the Ministry of Agriculture, Climate Change and Environment. What strategies can we employ to attract investments in renewable energy, ecotourism, and sustainable agriculture?
Okay, I must admit that there are a lot happening in terms of attracting investors, but there can be more that can be done with regards to strategies to be employed. Especially when it comes to the environmental sector, renewable energy, sustainable tourism. Firstly, which is very important, we need to create the legal framework. In the previous panel discussion, this was also discussed and it was talked about. Proper legal framework needs to be put in place so as to create the ideal condition, the ideal environment, and at the same time protect core resources, for example, water, agricultural land, and also it sets clear targets and guide investors as to what can be done and what can be done at certain areas. For example, we are now developing the agriculture strategy, which will be approved this year. Some of the outcomes that have been identified in the strategy in order to attract investors includes invest in core infrastructure and improve access to sustainable low-cost financing instruments. So this in itself, it gives you an idea as to where we want to go in terms of attracting more investment in this area, and also to build competitiveness of the local farmers and the local agri-food producers, so as to be able to tackle the challenge of import substitutes. So again, creating a competitive trading environment. And also then it's to, we need to create more financial incentives, for example, in terms of exemption, tax rebates, subsidies. So again, this will help to reduce upfront cost, and at the same time, it gives a guarantee to the investors that comes to the country. We know that we, in terms of tourism, ecotourism, we have introduced the sustainable tourism label, but there needs to be more in terms of eco-labeling. So this is something that we need to identify, and we need to be able to choose products and services that are sustainable. And also, we need to build capacity. There was this mention in the previous panel discussion. We need to build capacity in terms of how to develop infrastructure, how to invest in those areas, so as to come up with more sustainable practices in those areas. For example, we've talked a lot about waste to energy. What can we do, and how we can facilitate the process for investors, and also what type of ecotourism facilities that can be introduced, and also in terms of agricultural development infrastructure. And also there needs to be more training and education. This was also spoken by Mr. Wozeli in the previous panel discussion. We need to provide training, but at the same time, what can be developed through the trainings, and how they can use what they've learned to develop the sectors that we are talking about. So we need skilled workforce. We need those people to support our sustainable projects. And also we need to promote market opportunities for whoever wants to invest in those sectors. We need to facilitate access to local and international markets, so that they can market their products and also their services and projects, for example, in terms of sustainable organic agriculture, and also in terms of ecotourism, and then offer them the incentives for exportation of their products.
Thank you, Mrs. Law. That was very insightful, a new perspective as well. I'd like to ask our private consultant, Ms. Fatim, to look directly to the audience, because you're the one who's going to have to sell them on this. What are the benefits of sustainable investment, and what is its importance, please?
Very much for this question. Well, with regards to the benefits and importance of sustainable investment, I will say that it's quite broad, but it includes long-term profitability. It includes risk mitigation, positive impacts, environmental conservation, and also resilience to changing market conditions. Its importance lies in promoting responsible business practices and contributing to the well-being of society and the environment. So sustainable investments do offer a range of benefits that extend beyond financial returns, making them increasingly important in today's global context. So one of the key advantages of sustainable investment is their positive impact on the environment. So by supporting, investors can contribute to mitigating climate change, for instance, reducing carbon emissions, and conserving natural resources. So this only helps protect the planet for future generations, but also aligns with the growing societal focus on environmental stewardship. Furthermore, sustainable investment do often lead to social benefits. So companies that adhere to sustainable practices typically prioritize ethical business conducts, fair labor practices, and community engagement. So this can result in positive social outcomes, such as job creation, for instance, poverty alleviation, improve access to education and healthcare, and enhance quality of life for local communities. So sustainable investment does have a potential to drive positive social change and contribute to inclusive growth. So from a financial perspective, sustainable investments are increasingly recognized for their long-term value and resilience. So companies that integrate environmental, social, and governance factors into their business strategies are often better positioned to manage risks. So they seize opportunities and deliver strong financial performance over time. So investors who prioritize sustainability can benefit from reduced exposure to environmental risks, to regulatory uncertainties and reputational damage, while also tapping into growing market demands for sustainable products and services. So overall, the importance of sustainable investment lies in their potential to generate positive outcomes across economic and environmental and social dimensions. So by allocating capital towards sustainable projects, companies, investors can not only achieve financial returns, but they can also contribute to a more sustainable and equitable future for individuals, communities, and the planet as a whole. I'm not yet finished, but definitely sustainable investment should be indeed a responsible choice to move forward with. Thank you.
Thank you, Fatim. You really convinced us all about the benefits and perhaps going into sustainable investment. Perhaps I'd like to ask CEO to just briefly intervene and really tell us what is the benefit of sustainable investment in Seychelles and why is it important from the perspective of SIB?
Well, from our perspective, I think Ms. Kante has really delved into that, but from our perspective, it's really about protecting our future. You know, it's really about bringing in the investment that is good. I think SS mentioned the vision of the country. So investors and so government, we are responsible for the future, even though we are here acting on the present, but we are also building the future for our children and our children's children. And we are being affected by climate change. This is a reality. But in the midst of that, how do we continue to grow and develop and really maintain the ecosystem in a way that it's, I wouldn't say protected, because protected is really a restrictive word, but that it's actually sustained, is the better word, there you go, sustained for the future to come. And it is our role as a promoting body, when we're promoting something, to be responsible about what we're promoting. So we feel we are more comfortable by, when we've looked at the SDG goals, and it really presents what the future wants for the world, what we want for the world in the future, and how we want to protect our planet or sustain our planet. And we have to look at these measures, and we have to look at our people at the center of evolution, but still being able to live, grow, eat, be educated, and also be prosperous. And how to do that is by having an an economy which is resilient to the climate change and everything that's happening around us.
Thank you, CEO. And in light of what you've heard, Ms. Fatim, what is the current status of sustainable investment initiatives in Seychelles?
So the current status of sustainable investments in Seychelles reflects the country's commitment to promoting environmental conservation, social development, and economic sustainability. Seychelles has made significant strides at advancing sustainable investment practices across various sectors, leveraging its natural assets, for instance, and unique biodiversity to attract investors who prioritize with responsible and impactful investments. So in the tourism sector, for instance, Seychelles has been focusing on developing eco-friendly accommodations, promoting marine and wildlife conservation, and enhancing community-based tourism initiatives. Whereas the renewable energy projects have also gained momentum in Seychelles. Investment in solar and other clean energy resources, helping reduce dependency on fossil fuels, for instance, and also mitigate climate change impacts. So in the field of sustainable agriculture initiatives, promoting organic farming, agroecology, and sustainable land management practices have been gaining traction. So Seychelles is working tirelessly towards handling food security, supporting local farmers, and promoting sustainable agricultural production methods that prioritize environmental conservation and long-term sustainability. Conservation efforts in Seychelles have been robust with investments in marine protected areas, in endangered species conservation, for instance, and habitat restoration projects, and also aim at preserving the country's rich biodiversity. So the PPPs have played a crucial role in these initiatives, and ensuring the effective management and protection of Seychelles' natural resources. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fatim. You've really touched upon the environment and everything, the efforts that have been done towards these sectors. So it's only fitting that I pass the question to Ms. Law. What role does the government play in promoting and supporting sustainable investment practice in Seychelles? I know that Ms. Fatim has spoken extensively on the efforts that have been done, but in terms of the government point of view, what efforts could you really say highlight sustainable initiatives in Seychelles?
Okay. I think the government has a very important role when it comes to promoting and supporting sustainable investment practices in the country. Most importantly, we need to ensure that whatever policies or strategies are put in place or are implemented, they are aligned with the SDG targets, like has been discussed previously. With that being said, I'm thinking about, for example, when it comes to environment, climate change, SDG 12, which relates to sustainable consumption and production, SDG 13, which relates to life below water, SDG 14, life on land. So we need to ensure that whatever targets are they are in line with our with the SDGs. And also, as I said before, we need to ensure that the legal framework in place is one that is attractive, is one that is clear, and the government needs to ensure that it takes the role of facilitator in the process. So facilitate investment, but at the same time, make sure that whatever projects or activities, they are integrated, they are sustainable, so that, as we said previously, our future generation can also enjoy what we are enjoying now. And also, as stated, the government can put in place incentives, can access funds so as to be able to provide to the investors, and also to create that ideal environment that attracts investors in the country. I know a lot is being done, but however, there can be improvement in the area. For example, incentives can be put in place so as to help young entrepreneurs to start their businesses, to start, invest, and also to help reduce risk for investors. And I know a lot has been said with regards to public-private partnership. And this also creates a sense of assurance to investors and promote the sort of collaboration that we want in terms of government and the private sector as a whole. So I think the government has an important role, a facilitator's role in the process.
I know CEO is dying to intervene, so I'll pass the microphone to you.
Yeah, because Ms. Lord touched on an important word, which is facilitator, and this is me and my team's role. I know there are some pains that exist sometimes when we are facilitating project, and it could lead to some delays. But there is, I want investors to take our assurance, there is une volonté, comme disent les Français, to really get these projects to life, and whatever kind of pains that we go through, sometimes it is needed. We are talking about Seychelles, and we are talking not about protection of the environment, but we are talking about building projects that are sustainable. So some of the delays sometimes happen because in the facilitation of these projects, because it needs to be looked at in all, these projects needs to be looked at in all of the facets, so that we do know that when it lands in execution, it is something that's going to be successful. So I just wanted to add on that.
Thank you, CEO. My last question goes to you, actually. And I think we're all dying for the answer. What are the emerging opportunities for investors interested in sustainable projects in Seychelles? So I'd like you to address the audience.
What, sorry?
What are the emerging opportunities,
emerging opportunities
for investors interested in investing?
Yes, emerging opportunities is really around what we say. There's been some MTPS. Basically, we haven't really built the ecosystem for it. We talk about the 5 sectors. Yes, there's quite of development in the 5 sectors, but there are other sectors that we see that can bring around change. And I would refer now to waste management is one where we need to build bankable projects, and also in terms of online platforms where we need to have these kind of tools, or let's say infrastructure that will help or will support the transformation of the economy going forward. Yeah.
Thank you. And from the banking aspect, Ms. Audrey, would you like to intervene on that question?
Yes, thank you. I think even from the banking sector side, there are opportunities emerging for financing of sustainable projects. So recently there have been emergence of the ESG loans targeting vehicle specifically, and then there are green loans being offered as well, and the blue finance scheme, which is also available. So if maybe investors want to have more information on these, they can contact their banks and even DBS for information.
Thank you. And from Mr. Melani, perhaps you can explain, tell us a bit more about what you think are the emerging opportunities from an entrepreneurial point of view.
For your question, as a young entrepreneur, there are a lot of opportunity. We have the renewable energy, whereby plastic, we can use them to mold or recycle or repurpose them into other products. there's the fishing industry where there's a lot of potential in regards to value-added products such as fish ball, fish sausage, and the market out there is really big and large. There's also the agriculture sector, which is really good and really like a pillar in Seychelles. We just need a little more of a government involvement and backing because we do need some funding on that end. There's also fintech, like Mr. Sebastian was emphasizing on. This is a field where you have a lot of young individuals who are really keen and really interested in venturing this sector itself. In total, there are a lot of opportunities out there. We just need, like you said, we just need one incubator and a lot of the PPP, partnership between the public and the private, to come together, we collaborate, and we make policies and regulation that helps for the future of the economy and the young ones.
Thank you, Mr. Milani. I think CEO would like to reassure you on points raised.
Just to touch on one point regarding agriculture. I mean, we were at a forum and something came to mind. We were thinking, how do we transform the agricultural sector in Seychelles? But one of the things that really was was highlighted for us is that we see a lot of economies using smart technology in agriculture. And I think Seychelles is yet to embrace this to some extent. And this is an area, if we get it right, and then we improve on the logistics and on the freight and trade route, we have a regional capacity to export or to have intra-trade massively. So if we use that, I mean, we have Africa next door, and they can, I mean, it would make it less costly for us to import. So we're targeting the SDG 1, right, or 2, which is food, I think. But if we do get these things right around the borders, I think these will really enhance the development of our Seychelles.
Thank you, CEO. I'd like to give an opportunity to the audience if they have any questions for our incredible panelists. I see 2 hands.
So thank you so much, Angelique and the panelists, and thank you, SIB, for hosting such an event today on your anniversary. It's very kind of you to invite me. And I have a slight question about the SDG Investor Map. We are focusing a lot on conservation, on ecology, ocean science, conservation, and a lot of things. But I think there is a gap that has been missed, and this is comment on dit ça? The health sector. I believe that if we promote the privatization of certain health initiatives by allowing a private hospital, this would allow the current system to have a sustainable health management. Just like you would have a sustainable waste management, we can also have a sustainable health management. And with regards to government policies for education, we are doing a great job in sending a lot of young students abroad or the University of Seychelles. And why not use this conservation initiative to allow us to have more naturopath doctors? So we can offer a degree in medicine focusing on natural medication. And by doing that, if the government would not want to have a naturopath doctor, then we can have them privatize themselves and have their own private clinic. So I would appreciate a comment on that from the panelists, since Madame Kante mentioned quality of healthcare, and the CEO mentioned about what the government feels that we can achieve, but let alone it is a private and a public sector approach, and we allow for the privatization of our services. So that's the question that I would have. Oh, comments. Thank you so much.
Thank you. To have Ms. Conte or CEO to intervene.
I think private health exists in Seychelles, but to the extent of having a second hospital, this is where we don't have. We specialize treatments as big as Victoria provides. The opportunity is there for that to happen. There's been a request. There are projects in the pipeline. So I think it's going to happen one way or the other moving forward. Now, if the people want to decide where they want to go, if they want to pay for the private health or go public so that they can benefit from free care and primary care, that's their choice. But at the moment, a large number of our population is already using private care. What I think would help is if we have institutions here in Seychelles that can cater for health, specialized health. Like we have a lot of our people going overseas for treatment. But however, you know that healthcare is a costly business. And that would take some sort of joint ventures so that it could happen successfully. And there are projects, I can tell you that. It's not a lack of not trying, there are.
Thank you, Ms. Conte.
All right, thank you again for, can you please tell me your name? Sorry.
So Leroy Victorian, the Victor's Right Consultant. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you for the question and the comment. It has already been laid. Everything has been explained by the CEO. But the good thing I would like to touch on is it's very important for Seychelles to be able to give the opportunities needed at a wider range. Let's say, for instance, as it was laid by the CEO, that it's important to give the choice to the public to be able to have access to different institutions that are in place. When we're referring to healthcare, most people definitely use the services of the private healthcare. But I think it's very important for us as a nation to be able to give sufficient and vast institutions that are specialized in the country to give the Seychellois the opportunity to choose. Because, you know, the opportunity cost is quite essential here. So it's very vital to be able to give people choices for them to see what works for them and what does not work for them.
Yes, so thank you for the question. Just a small comment. Because this initiative is so important, because I know that a lot of people use the private clinics in Seychelles, but when it comes to surgery, a lot of people tend to travel overseas. Even the government is so kind to send them overseas. So by allowing and creating that space, and I'm glad that some things have been done, like the CEO mentioned, we will be able to save some budget and improve our local services and keep the health sector from the national side for free, because it is a very kind initiative of the government. I'm not undermining that. But if we want to manage it so well, we can improve our own and allow others to create that, that more sustainable. It is not entirely all dependent on the government, but there is a very private and a very important private sector in place to play their roles also. It's about the stakeholder management, the stakeholder concept, and this is why I believe we're all here today. We are all different stakeholders. So thank you so much for answering my question.
We'll take our last question for the gentleman in the front. Yes.
Thank you very much. Your forum was very insightful. Well, when it comes to Seychelles, it has its own sustainable soft power that is quite reflective. And also, I saw a statistic in one of your presentations that Seychelles has about 238 million per year when it comes to investments. So to increase another 100 million in different sectors, CEO, what is your strategy for your investment board in the future? Because it's very important. My name is Dr. Shrimal Fernando from the University of Seychelles. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor, for your question. I would also like, before I move to your question, I will answer Mr. Leroy's, just a comment on the, what he was saying regarding healthcare. Healthcare for Seychelles is free, it's in the Constitution, right? Our nation can choose to have free healthcare or can choose to get specialized care. If you want to have specialized care in the private sector in Seychelles, you can choose to do that. But if you need special care, there is a board that approves treatment for you to go overseas and all that. However, like I say, Ms. Fatim was saying, it's an opportunity cost. So Seychelles would judge, can I afford it? Can I afford private care? Or can I just continue going to my free care that I use, my clinic, my hospital, for me to do my scans and so on and so forth. And I think in Seychelles, only Victoria Hospital is currently doing scans. So we have to have that private establishment that can take that. Where now, how effective would that be, and what are the infrastructure in place? And when I'm talking about that, I'm talking about everything else. You know, healthcare does just not operate on itself. You have to think about how do you pay for that. There might come in insurances, you know, how do we manage our financial expectation versus our health risk, you know, how does that too in the future, life insurance and all that. So there is other aspect that needs to be considered, and I think maybe in the future one of the forums can consider that. I mean, that we will have, take healthcare on itself and have a topic of discussion about it. It's not only about healthcare as well, it's about capacity, it's about if you have the scale, you know, you need to be making return on investment if you're in the private sector, you know, it's a profit-making venture if you're in the private sector. Or how are you going to do it in terms of a PPP, or if it's a joint venture with somebody else. So we have to think about all these things when it comes to healthcare. And if we have the specialists, you know, do you have the heart surgeon? Do you have somebody who's able to do cosmetic surgery in terms of the specialties that comes with that and all of the rest? So we have to see if that is available and if we do have skills that can meet that market for it to be a success. Moving on to the question of Doctor, I think he was referring to, sorry, the strategy for the gap of 300 million to 298 currently. Obviously, when we look at the gap was pre-COVID, and we are now looking to bridge that gap. So in our investment kind of portfolio, when we look at it, the majority is from tourism establishments and accommodation. It's tourism related. There could be tourism sports and sport activities in there as well. But we're looking at diversification. So if we are talking diversification and we are talking at adding value, and the policy or strategy of the Department of Tourism is really high quality, and I think that the contribution of a tourist in Seychelles, they were placing it at $1,000 USD or something like that, but if they increase that, it would be more. So we are talking about value added. What do we sell these visitors that come to our island? What do we export? I talked earlier on about regional and cross-border trade. How do we improve on our logistics for us to maximize that so that we are able to reduce the cost in import, increase decrease the cost of living, because if we manage to manage our cost in we import a lot as a country. I can't tell you the right percentage right now, but I'm sure it's around on the CBS website. So as an country that imports a lot, our cost of living is decidedly higher than elsewhere, and we're a small island. So the logistics to come to us is even more costly. So if we can limit these gaps and by doing so, diversify our economy, we not only can go back to that 300 million, we can even surpass that 3 million. So that's the strategy. We're looking at impact investment. We're looking at improving our facilities that we have. The port, the airport is looking at transformation. There is a plan to presently to sort of modernize our port and also look at our airport infrastructure. If we have transiting facilities, we could have any other kind of businesses and activities that can benefit. We can benefit from it as a small country. We could be exporting to countries around us that have treasures and resources to pair us for that. So we are looking at value added. We're looking at diversification sustainably, doing that. Looking at the resources which we can use to create value added. Our fish cannot, we not only want to export the fish itself, just the raw material. How do we translate that? Do we do leather bags with the fins or with the scales or whatever? Do we do with our honey that we produce locally? It's small. We're a small country, but can we have the best honey in the world, apparently. Can we sell this locally and build it to a level where we can sell at a high value? We want to develop our cinnamon sector. We've launched that 2 years coming into now. It's difficult, it's a process, but we've got one of the best cinnamon, cinnamon is used in almost anything. Medicine, food, preservation, whatever. So if we are thinking about diversification, these are the things we should be thinking about. And these will bring our numbers up in FDI. And I won't even talk only about FDI. If we are spreading the la richesse, our people, our local people, will also be able to do more business. Bring in, innovation with digitalization. There are a lot of opportunities for that. If we can do these things, we're looking at surpassing this number. Thank you very much.
Thank you, CEO. Unfortunately, we've reached the end of our panel discussion. It's been a very exciting one. Thank you to our incredible panelists. A round of applause for them, please. And I know that there'll be more activities organized by SIB. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you to our panelists and moderator for another thought-provoking discussion. Please remain on stage for a group photo. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, kindly be reminded that on your table you will find a feedback form. Please be so kind to leave your feedback before you leave. And for the drivers, do not forget to validate your ticket at the reception. As we conclude this fruitful and engaging business forum, I would like to express our gratitude to each and every one of you. Special thanks go to our distinguished speakers and panelists for sharing their invaluable knowledge and perspectives. To our sponsors and partners, your support has been instrumental in bringing this event to life. We appreciate your commitment to fostering a vibrant business environment in Seychelles. Finally, all our attendees, we hope you leave here today with new connections, ideas, and a renewed enthusiasm for the opportunities ahead. Let us continue to work together to drive progress, innovation, and sustainable growth for our beautiful nation. Thank you all, and please join us for refreshments in the lobby. Have a good day and have a wonderful week. Thank you.